Somebody texted me. I was like, I'm not there. Yeah, good. It's live on Facebook. Before it started. No, something was recording, but wasn't enough room. So they called me and Bill's on the next one. So he said,
Good evening, everyone. I'd like to call the Public Safety and Public Works Committee and the Administration, Finance, and Recreation and Parks Committee meeting of April 13th to order. I got a thumbs up from our technology folks that we're good to go, so we'll go ahead and call these committee meetings to order. The first item on the agenda for the Public Safety and Public Works Committee is approval of the minutes of the March 9th Public Safety and Public Works Committee. Do I have a motion for that approval?
Motion to approve.
I have a motion from Councilmember Judy. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second from Councilmember Tyser. All in favor, raise your hand. Thank you. That passes unanimously. So we'll go into the public safety fire item first, which is item number 2. And this is consideration of an ordinance to amend Chapter 8 of the Health and Public Safety, Article 8.7, Air Pollution Control. I will let Chief Popadis come up and give you the information on this item. Chief?
This side, Michael?
Yes, sir. It's fine right here.
Okay.
You can do right here in the front.
Okay. Good evening, Mayor and Council. The Fire Department would like to propose a change in the open burning ordinance. And the changes are specifically to remove it from the clean air ordinance and put it in the fire department. This is for enforcement reasons. The original clean air ordinance was designed for the clearing of land, and they dug a pit and they put the brush and the trees in, they burned it, and it required written notices before a citation could be issued. So by putting it into the fire department, we'll be able to enforce it a lot better. The proposal also restricts some burning but allows other burning. In other words, what we're doing is we're maintaining the same burn ordinance where the fire has to be less than 3 feet in diameter, but we're adding the International Fire Code components of that to where it has to be 25 feet from a structure and 25 feet from a property line. And then along with that, we are limiting the type of materials that can be burned. They can basically only burn wood, not treated wood, not any other kind of grass clippings or brush, only wood. And then, of course, we have a section where we're allowing permits to be issued for any burning that would exceed the ordinance. I'll give you an example. If you have a movie production company comes in and they want to have a particular fire for their film, then we have a way that they can permit. The fire marshal will go to that site, inspect the site, determine any hazards, and then they would, the fire marshal would tell them the requirements that they would allow them to burn that would be exceed the limits of our ordinance. And the other issue that we came up against was we had people that wanted to burn to get rid of brush, and our current ordinance says that they're allowed to have a recreational fire, but it does not limit the number of fires that they can have at each address. So the new ordinance would limit to one fire at each address. And then we have a provision in there that would exceed that if we had, let's say a Cub Scout troop or Boy Scout troop wanted to have a camp set up at the church or something, they could come and get a permit, and the fire marshal would inspect the site and give them requirements for them to be able to do that. That might be on the lines of a fire watch or actually having personnel there ready to extinguish it if there was a problem. And it also requires that all fires be attended until the fire is completely extinguished, and requires a portable fire extinguisher with a minimum of 4A rating or other on-site fire extinguishing equipment such as 5-gallon bucket of dirt or sand, water barrel, or garden hose for immediate utilization. And we would like to consider this proposal to change this ordinance, and we'd be glad to answer any questions you might have.
Thank you, Chief Hoppus. Is there any questions for this, for the Chief? Councilmember Palermo?
Thank you. Chief, I appreciate you walking through all that information the way you did. Everything was making sense to me. There's one area that I have concern with, and I have a little hesitation in wanting to look a little closer at, which is the regarding fire pits. So my concern is for smaller properties, so homes that are RS9, RS12, et cetera. I guess my concern is there enough distance typically on those properties for there to be 25 feet between the structure and the property line? Because I guess my hesitation or concern is, are we outlawing fire pits on for people that don't have as big a yards? So that's concern number one. Concern number two I have is, what about the individuals that already have a fire pit on the smaller properties? Are they grandfathered in? How does that work? Because I'm thinking of one I used to go to, which is in an RS12, and I'm just not even sure there's 50 feet between the house and the back. So that's the one area that makes me hesitant to move forward tonight without fully understanding that and getting with ComDev. Everything else on there I think makes perfect sense. So what's your reaction or thoughts to my question or concerns?
Well, the requirement to be 25 feet from a structure and 25 feet from a property line actually comes from the International Fire Code, which the state fire marshal has adopted into law. So that's basically a state law, and we can't tell people they can break state law, so they wouldn't be able to burn in that situation.
And so, and I feel like we've encountered some situations like that before. It makes me think of one near Cox Road, et cetera. Absolutely, we cannot say something that says somebody can break a state law, but at the same time, I guess I just have hesitation. If it's a state law, it's already illegal. Do we really need to add that in? Because ultimately, I don't think this council should be the one saying, hey, if you have an RS12 property, you're not allowed to have or RS9, you're not allowed to have a fire pit. I'd rather just have that be the state law, and we move forward without that piece. And again, once I meet with ComDev, they might show me, no, these size properties do have the 50 feet needed. But again, I just have concern moving that forward. If it's a state law, it's a state law. I'm just saying, right now, what we're talking about is the Roswell Code and the Roswell law.
Thank you, Councilmember Hall.
Thank you. Just following up, initially when you started, you had mentioned that we're adding the IFR, the International Fire Code, to our law. Currently, we don't have that as part of our other ordinance, or the ordinance that exists.
I'll let the fire marshal answer that question.
Mayor and Council. It is already adopted. Our ordinance from way back did not incorporate that at the time, and we wanted to incorporate it as a total package so that we can put in the ordinance, the verbiage about occupying it or having someone there all the time while the fire is burning. That's a situation we run into where somebody may have a recreational fire and then they'll leave it, and if those requirements are in here, they're easier to enforce and hand somebody a piece of paper with our entire ordinance on it and say, you can't do that. So we're trying to incorporate this all together in one ordinance.
Thank you. Councilmember Zapata.
Thank you. So, yeah, one concern was the fire pit that was just addressed now. My other one was, is charcoal considered wood? Because you say you can only burn wood. So, you know, I'm a big fan of grilling. Is charcoal considered wood or not?
What we don't want, you can only burn natural wood. Now, the exception to that would be when you have, let's say, man-made compressed wood for barbecue smoking pellets. They have barbecue compressed wood, and you also have firewood that's compressed that is sold commercially in stores that you could use. But we don't want them to burn trash, rubbish, brush, grass clippings, leaves. All that is prohibited, but it does allow for wood, natural wood, and some man-made items so it doesn't produce a lot of smoke. You have something to add to that?
Yes, sir. Councilman, under letter A, we have those designed for cooking and smoking of food. So even if it's not one of the items on here, if it's designed for the cooking or smoking of food, we've addressed that.
Great, thank you.
Councilmember Judy.
Thank you, Michael. So just to clear up a little bit of the confusion here, I believe, per our discussion today and per looking at this, I think that what you all are trying to do is we're already bound by these rules through the International Fire Code, which the state adopted. What we're doing is bringing this into our code now to clarify and make sure that the citizens of Roswell know what the law is based upon our code. So we're just basically putting that in our code so they know what the state law is. So if something comes up and you go out to you all or whoever goes out and cites them, they say, well, it's not in the city code. Well, it's the state law. Well, why isn't it in the city code? Because it's not in the state law. So for transparency, it's like people here need to know why or what the law is that we're bound by as a state. So, you know, I agree with Councilman Palermo. I don't like that. I mean, I told you today, I don't like that there's 25 feet and this, that, and the other. But if we're bound by it, I would like the citizens to know we're bound by this law versus it being, well, that's the state law. And, you know, you could still be cited for this, but, you know, it's not in our code. So I would like it to be as clear as possible for the residents to know that, hey, this is a state law, we're bound by this, yet rather than it not be there and there be kind of a bit of confusion. Is that correct? Is that what we're trying to do with this this addition?
Yes, sir. Most of the time, people will look at the ordinance to see if they can burn, but they're not going to go look at the International Fire Code to see if they can burn. They're going to look at the city ordinance.
And the other thing it does, when the complaint comes in, the fire trucks go, they respond. And the fire truck carry the burn ordinance, and they hand them the burn ordinance, say, you can't do this. Well, a lot of times they get challenged because our burn ordinance was so vague, and now that we have introduced the International Fire Code and the requirements there, they can hand it to them and say, here, see, you can't do that. So it's easier for our firefighters when they get there. They don't have to argue with the person to say, well, that's vague, it doesn't say that. And now it says it.
Mayor Henry.
Okay, so I think you clarified my first question, which is what is the reason that we're shifting from the air pollution control to the prohibited acts? So have we had an onslaught of illegal burning in the city of Roswell?
We've had several in the past month or so, and they've been challenging to deal with because of how our current ordinance is written.
Okay, so I've got several questions for you because I hate to say this in a public meeting, but I believe my husband and I have been violating the law unknowingly. One thing is he will smoke meat on a green egg, and it'll smoke for 24 hours. So he's got a temperature control in by the bed, he's monitoring it while he's sleeping, but we've got a fire going outside. And that goes all night long in order for us to smoke meat. And it's only about 10 feet from the house. Then we've also got a copper kettle, huge copper kettle, that's on legs that I guess you would call it a fire pit. It's not a pit, it's above ground on legs. And we burn that, and I don't believe that's 25 feet away from the house. But it is within the enjoyment of our outdoor space. So, and I can tell you, we don't leave a raging fire and go to bed, but once it's down to embers and whatever, and we have a screen that we put on top of it, then, you know, we're good. So tell me that I've been violating the law, because I will, I'll have a good sale on a really expensive copper kettle and also a green egg if anybody's interested. So could you give me some clarification on that? Because what I'm finding more and more, especially during COVID and pre-COVID, and it's just the city of Roswell enjoys being outside. We like to be outside. We like to enjoy the outdoors. And especially with COVID, we're outside with friends and neighbors, socially distancing in the great outdoors around a copper kettle burning some wood. So what you all are saying is that's problematic and we can't do that anymore. Is that correct?
Is it on a deck?
Yep.
That's problematic. We never, ever suggest that people put a fire pit of any kind. Now, there's gas-fired pits that can go on a deck, but anything that burns wood we consider that a potential fire, deck fire, because of embers, sparks that fall down between the crack of the deck and possibly ignite. So, yeah, we would consider that problematic if it was on a deck.
Okay, so what I need to do is, my deck is only a foot off the ground, so I need to replace the deck with a stone patio. Wait till I tell my husband this one. And then we're legal again?
Yes, if you're 25 feet from the structure.
We're not going to be 25 feet, so we're not. I will not in my house be able to use our green egg or our copper kettle fire.
Is there?
The green egg is not part of this. This is for open burning.
Yes.
So the green egg is part of a barbecue. So that would not fall under
Okay.
this ordinance. But also, if you look at the manufacturer's recommendations on your burn pit, it will explain to you or tell you that you shouldn't be using it on combustible surfaces or within a certain distance to combustible products.
Right. Okay, just curious.
Councilmember Tyser.
Thank you, Michael. Just to clear up a little bit of confusion, Chief, do I remember right that we adopted into our code of ordinances the International Fire Code?
Yes, we did.
So I believe everything you've said, that there's some confusion I'm hearing about whether it's a state law or a Roswell ordinance. If we adopted the International Fire Code into our code of ordinances, then isn't this already there?
Yes, it is.
And so now it sounds a lot simpler because all you're doing is essentially cut and paste from the International Fire Code into this particular ordinance. Am I following along?
Yes, that's exactly what we're doing for clarity for this particular ordinance, because it's hard for the firemen to say, well, here's the ordinance, and then have a copy of the code and find everything. So here it's in one spot. They can hand it to the people, or whoever's enforcing, a police officer, whoever can hand it to them, and it's all right there, and there's no question. We're just cut and pasting the IFC in there.
Sure, that clarifies some things for me that makes me understand that all of these things are already our laws.
We're sort of reinventing the wheel a little bit, but it's a little redundant, but it's for clarity for this particular ordinance.
Councilmember Zapata.
Thanks. So if this is already a state law, can you enforce state law?
Yes,
So it is a state law.
yes.
Okay, so you can, so what is the point to have it here if it's already state law, and if the state law changed, then we have to go back again and change ours, or why don't we just enforce state law instead of having to move, as the rhythm of the state move one way or the other, we have to keep adjusting. Why don't you just use the state law and go from there?
We would have to change, if the state law changes, we would have to change the ordinance.
The point, so if we just enforce the state law, we don't have to be changing our local law according with the state law going one way or the other way.
Councilmember Hall.
Thank you. Just a couple questions. On the International Fire Code, did we adopt it in its entirety, or were we looking at transportation aspects of it?
We adopted it in its entirety with the amendments from the State Fire Marshal's office. They go through the Life Safety Code and the International Fire Code and amend it to work for the state of Georgia.
Okay, and then my next question, back to the open burning. We also have a lot of homeowners that are in the more rural aspects of Roswell and do burn leaves and yard waste and things like that. Is that not permitted?
That is currently not permitted and wouldn't be permitted in the new ordinance as well.
So it's part of the state law that it's not permitted?
Oh, no, it's part of our ordinance that it's not permitted for open burning for trash or anything at this time. The current ordinance that we have.
Okay, so our ordinance is stricter than both state and International Fire Code in that respect.
Which also brings me back to Councilman Zapata's question. We are a little bit more restrictive in this ordinance than the International Fire Code. The International Fire Code allows for bonfires. We don't allow for bonfires. We are being a little bit more restrictive in this ordinance so that it's clear and that that we don't have the opportunity for them. Were you able to understand that?
Yes.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you.
Any other questions? Do I have a motion from the committee regarding this item?
Motion to approve.
I have a motion to approve from Councilmember Judy. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second from Councilmember Tyser. All in favor, raise your hand. That is Councilmember Zapata, Councilmember Hall, Tyser, Mayor Henry, Councilmember Wilsey, and Councilmember Judy. All opposed, raise your hands. Councilmember Palermo, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We're moving over to Public Safety Police. Melissa Alterio will be presenting item 3, consideration of a contract agreement with Central Square. And I did fail to mention the BZA will be in this room at 7 o'clock, so we have a 6:45 hard stop for this particular meeting. It's part of the pains of having a transition out of COVID. We're having to share rooms. So it's 6:45 or so, we will need a hard stop on this meeting. Melissa.
Thank you, Michael. Good evening, Mayor and Council. I feel like we just did this last night. Hello again. Okay, so what we are proposing here, the Police Department and the Division of Emergency Communications request approval by Mayor and Council to sign a contract agreement with Central Square Technologies, which is our CAD system, our computer-aided dispatch system, for the use of their CryWolf false alarm management software. This agreement allows Central Square Technologies Alarm Services team to administer the alarm program in accordance with the City of Roswell's new alarm ordinance. Central Square Technologies will provide a fully interactive secure alarm program website that can be accessed by a link on the city's website. The secure online access allows alarm users to update their alarm information without waiting to speak to a customer service representative. This online service is also available 24 hours, 7 days a week. This website allows alarm users to review their registration status, update contact information, renew permits, make payments, and also provides alarm education. There's also a fantastic reporting service available to us in the city. The web-based registration may be used by alarm users and alarm companies to register the alarm users. And it also provides us, the city staff, secure online access to detailed alarm account information, history, supporting documentation, financial and alarm activity reports, and real-time hearing and appeals decision-making. False alarm payments are going to be made through the online alarm program payment portal. And alarm holders can pay online directly using our dedicated City Alarm Program website, which Central Square will host, so that citizens can pay individual alarm invoices or the full balance owed anytime, any day or night. So essentially, the false alarm ordinance that we approved just last night and the resolution of fees, we're asking to sign a contract with Central Square Technologies for the CryWolf false alarm management software to manage that false alarm, manage the false alarms in the city of Roswell. They're basically providing us with a turnkey service and managing the false alarm system. Their clients have received about a 70% reduction in false alarms and 87% collection rates. And to just recap real quick from last night, some false alarm stats. The Roswell Police Department in 2019 received a total, remember, I'm trying to forget 2020. Just a little side note joke there. Total alarms were 7,735, 97.72% of them were false. For the fire department in 2019, 1,167 total alarms and 98.54% were false. I am open for any questions.
Thank you, Melissa. Is there any questions? Do I have a motion from the committee?
Motion to approve.
Motion from Councilmember Judy to approve. Do I have a second? Second from Councilmember Wilsey. All in favor, raise your hand. I'm sorry, we have a question. Councilmember Zapata.
Thank you. So, okay, so I see we passed this alarm system, then now we're gonna hire someone to manage this. And I see here, and caught my attention, that they will charge 26% of the revenue generated from alarm permits, all alarm permits, and false alarms. So my point is here that why don't they just charge for the false alarm only and leave alone the alarm permits? So, and how much is going to be this service for? We didn't discuss this yesterday when we were talking about the policy. So now is coming phase 2 to spend money to control this service. So wait a minute, I really want to understand better here, and I think deserve more attention.
Absolutely, I understand your question. So essentially, we are not physically paying Central Square Technologies. They are going to take a portion of the revenue that we receive from false alarms, so 26%, as you stated. But outlining, as you see in the statement of work, all the work that CryWolf, the false alarm management system, has to do, the percentage that that they are going to receive is, we consider, fair and equitable in comparison to if, say, for instance, staff were having to manage that same setup. So if we go through the actual alarm process, we go through registration, we go through sending out letters. Letters to the alarm users, again, is 50 cents a letter, essentially, to alarm users. So that's money that we would have to spend ourselves, provided that we have staff members who are actually doing what we're asking Central Square Technologies to do. So we feel it's fair and equitable as far as the percentage that they're receiving.
So, but why they have to claim 26% of the alarm permits? I understand the false alarm fees, you know, that go from what, $25, $50 all the way to over $100. But why they would like to tap into the alarm permits? You know, it's nothing to do, alarm permit with the false alarm calls that cost money to dispatch and et cetera. So, you know, I'm trying to see, trying to understand better how much money these people are gonna make out of this alarm system policy we just passed. And I just want to get it more clear, the situation here.
So I can provide a little bit of a response to your question. As Melissa mentioned, the goal of this and what occurs in most jurisdictions that adopt this program is a significant reduction in false alarms, and that is our goal. And I think the industry average, when you adopt the model ordinance that we adopted, as well as a management company that manages the program, they do very good on sending out the bills, sending out the false alarm letters, because as you know, in our fee schedule, the first false alarm, there is no charge. So that company's gaining no revenue for the cost of the stamp, the cost to mail the letter. They have, my understanding, they have a formula that's based on your fee schedule that determines what their percentage is. I think if we adjusted the fee schedule or said, hey, you only get a percentage of registrations, it would change this contract. So it might be, oh, if we're just collecting registrations, we're gonna collect 100% of the registrations and none of the false alarm bills. I'm just speculating at what their formula would be.
Councilmember Tyser.
Thank you. I think the way this is working is this company is not just going to manage the process of billing and tracking false alarms. They're also going to be managing the process of taking application for the permit, collecting the money for the permit, and so those processes are essentially the same.
Correct.
Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
And so staff isn't doing any of this process. We're outsourcing both the collection of the fee for the permit and any violations after that.
That's correct.
If we
yes.
didn't do that way, we would have to essentially hire someone to manage the permit process. And then we would have to hire somebody to manage the letter writing process. And then our accounting department would have to have an accounts receivable collection process. And so you're rolling this all into a company that does this for a living. What might be helpful is if you could share with us other jurisdictions in the area who may be using them and if the schedule is similar.
We actually, there are several jurisdictions around us, and as a matter of fact, Chief Conroy's previous agency, DeKalb County, uses Crywolf. The specific contract that we're using, actually, we are piggybacking off, and I'm sorry, I don't know the financial term to use other than piggybacking off of the City of Lawrenceville's Crywolf contract. We are actually receiving a better return than the City of Lawrenceville, however, because of our fee schedule. So that's two examples right there, but if I'm not mistaken, the City of Dunwoody, Johns Creek, Sandy Springs, and Atlanta all use Crywolf. Those are just some references that I have.
Thank you.
Councilmember Palermo.
Thank you. So Councilman Tyser's thought process actually was pretty similar to where I was going. So you already know the amount of false alarms that we had in the previous year, and you know the fee schedule and what we approved. So I guess what I'd be curious to see is just really what is the estimated amount, and I would think either you or Mr. Luckett know our total amount of alarm licenses or whatever the word is. So I guess I'd be curious to see what the anticipated revenue is, or basically the cost. And that's what I'll need to make my decision. So my intention tonight is probably to abstain. And then basically, as long as that total cost is less than all the additional costs that would occur that Councilman Tizer laid out, then I'll be supporting this at the council meeting. But then, of course, if it's a very high number where what Councilman Tizer laid out would actually be a lower cost, then that's where I would not be in support. So is that kind of clear on what I want to see prior to the council meeting?
I'm sorry.
I saw Mr. Luckett shaking it. He's the numbers guy, so I saw him nodding his head. If you want to translate, Mr.
I think we can put an estimate together if we move this forward to council. I think that the council meeting, we can have an estimate based on history of what we think it might be at that percentage.
Yeah. So I guess actually I plan on either abstaining unless the motion includes bringing that prior to council, then I'll be in support of it tonight.
All right, Councilmember Hall had a question.
Yes, thank you. My question was, what other purveyors of the service have been vetted? And I know that some of our colleague cities use this. And also, what is our commitment to the contract? How long is the contract? When can we change? Can we change purveyors? How easily we can change people that provide the service?
So there are other purveyors of the service. Because Central Square is our computer-aided dispatch system. CryWolf is a component of Central Square, so for us, it's essentially turning on a module. They do have a sole source, but we did consult with Ryan and Mr. Anderson about procuring through the piggybacking off of the City of Lawrenceville's contract. So we did not, because of those reasons and because of the agencies that also use CryWolf, we did not go out and vet a lot of other alarm services because this was a complete turnkey project, and plus it is completely associated with our computer-aided dispatch system, which also means pulling the information on the back end is going to be extremely user-friendly.
Councilmember Judy.
Right now, we're receiving $0 from anything, correct?
That's correct.
With this, we will not be paying out any dollars, correct?
That's correct.
But we will be receiving income off permits and false alarm calls, correct?
Correct.
So this is not costing the city anything, but we will, as a deterrent to false alarms, be receiving revenue.
That's correct.
Okay.
And
So really right now, this is something that's not, it's not going to cost the city any money.
that's correct.
Okay, thank you.
Councilmember Tizer.
Yeah, I was just going to do the math on that. So let's say the total of fees for the year, the total of applications, the total of fines is $100,000. We're going to pay a commission to CryWolf of 26%. And so that means that we will have a gross margin of, do the math real quick, 100 minus 26.
$74,000.
$74,000. Okay, that's how this would work. Am I correct? Thank you.
Councilmember Wilson.
Yes, thank you, and thanks for the math. I was just going to suggest that if you can do some projections in advance of bringing to council, what you expect the revenue to be and what the cost would be, I think, to have that along with this contract would be very helpful.
The one thing that's difficult for us with a portion of this is that we don't know how many alarms are out there. So we've never permitted alarms before. So that's the one big piece that we don't know how many people actually have alarm systems. So we can estimate that, but that's kind of the one big variable for us.
I think if you could figure it on kind of a what if or a range, just so we have some idea of what actual dollars
We can work together on some sort of estimate. Some of the variables that we don't know also is how many are just single alarms at a location, plus what is the deterrent factor. So when the whole point of this is when you receive that letter that you have a false alarm, your next one's going to cost you, is it $50? $50, that you will not have that false alarm. That is our ultimate goal. revenue is not my goal. It is reducing those false alarms. At my prior department, we did experience an over 60% reduction in false alarms, and that is our goal. Some of our other neighboring jurisdictions that have adopted alarm ordinances might be different than ours. I do know Sandy Springs adopted a somewhat controversial ordinance. Their alarms dropped probably 97%. So, but that's a different ordinance. We are not prepared to do that model.
So ultimately, the goal is to pay them as little as possible and to avoid the false alarms.
Yes. I would be happy to respond to 0 false
Right,
alarms a
right,
year.
absolutely.
Is my goal.
Councilmember Palermo.
Thank you. So two things. One, just so everyone's aware, the way I read the contract, it looked like in the first 2 years, if we were to terminate, that, in my opinion, it's significant costs. And after 2 years, it looks like it's not really any much costs after that, or really minor costs after that. And with that, I would like to make a motion to approve unless this committee objects and prefers to discuss more.
So I think we actually have a motion from Councilmember Judy and a second from Councilmember Wilsey to approve this item. If there's any changes to that.
Yeah, so what I want to clarify is, because Councilmember Wilsey actually works out well if she's the seconder, what I'd like is within the motion, if we could include that staff is gonna come with those estimates and provide that information prior to the council meeting.
Yes, I would amend the motion.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second to move this item forward to the next committee with the addition of bringing an estimate. I got you. Let me get the motion out. With the to bring an estimate before at the next council meeting. Is there any questions, Councilmember Zapata?
Yes, I would like to go back to Councilmember Hall's question about the procurement process. There was any other company who produced a module that you can integrate easily or generic in our existing system?
There are other purveyors out there. I think Crywolf is an industry leader, and there are some benefits because they are integrated with our computer-aided dispatch system. I think that if we were to go with a different company, I mean, anybody can integrate, but there are some benefits because of these two companies being one. And I'll let Melissa comment more on that, but that was my take.
Integration from other companies is going to, I mean, this is just a guess, and based on experience from what we've experienced before with other integrations, and I'm sure Chief can attest to this, integrations are probably going to cost us a lot more money. This is an already existing module that Central Square Technologies has in our computer-aided dispatch system. It's literally a matter of turning it on. But to work out an integration from a different company into our computer-aided dispatch system, again, based on experience, is likely to cost a significant amount of money.
Okay, thank you. So my last question, my last point here is, like, I noticed that the contract said 26% of the alarm permits. So I'm with the chief that we wish that all these false alarms go to 0. That would be awesome, but they're still, even if we get to 0, they still tag in 26% of the alarm permits. So that is base guarantee revenue for this company. So that is something we have to be, because, evaluating, because if we come to 0, why do we want them to get 26% of the alarm permit? That we might be able to reduce the alarm permit cost to our residents. So that is something that, I hope that we can keep an eye on. If there might be a point that everybody learn, no many false alarms calls, and then we can just eliminate the service, and then maybe even reduce the fee for the residents to have the alarm system in their house.
Thank you, Councilmember Zapata. So we have a motion and a second to approve this item to move it forward to the next mayor and council meeting with estimate of the cost as best as we can come up with at that meeting. All in favor, raise your hand. And that's unanimous. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Next item, item number 4, consideration to enter into a mutual agreement with the National Park Service. And
Okay.
Ms. Altero.
Number 2. So the Division of Emergency Communications requests approval by Mayor and Council to enter into an agreement with the National Park Service This agreement allows Roswell 911 Center to provide emergency communications dispatch services for the National Park Service Chattahoochee River National Recreation Area. This is dispatch services only. The National Park Service will continue to utilize Fulton County's radio system. We have already worked all that out on the back end through our interoperability connections with Fulton County. We will have the responsibility, Roswell 911 will have the responsibility for dispatch services with the Chattahoochee River National Recreation Area, a region that extends far outside of the city limits of Roswell. Our GIS mapping, thank you to Patrick and his team, are incredible with their mapping system. I really, again, through my industry experience, have to say that our GIS is probably by far the best I have ever seen in my 30 years. But as a little side note there, sorry. So our mapping will house all the landmarks and park mile markers within the service area to easily account for the National Park Service officer's location. And we shall track their incident data via our computer-aided dispatch system with the ability to provide reports to their chief ranger if necessary. So their total incident call volume averages approximately 2,700 to 3,000 per year, which allows us to fulfill these services at minimal disruption to our existing operations. So we have, the National Park Service agrees to pay the city of Roswell $47,967, which we had worked out with the Department of Finance to hopefully create a line item from the general fund to go back into the E911 budget. And I'm open for any questions.
Are there any questions? Councilmember Hall.
Just two questions. The first one is, this is, MOU is for 1 year.
Yes, it's for 1 year, but with the option for subsequent years. And we're hoping for like a 5-year plan, but
And
yes.
we would revisit the fees each year.
Yes, that's correct.
And my second question, does this include the visits to the mill area, the waterfall, the Vickery Mill, where we already go anyway?
Well, it's the National Park Service.
Okay.
It's essentially, we will be monitoring and maintaining their status. We will receive their calls from outside entities, the ones that we receive in Roswell. Instead of us having to call Fulton County 911 to dispatch a National Park Service, we will be doing it ourselves.
Any other questions? Do I have a motion?
Motion to approve.
A motion to approve by Councilmember Tyser. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Councilmember Judy. All in favor, raise your hands. And that's unanimous. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Melissa. Next item on the agenda, we'll move to Public Works. Item number 5, consideration for the mayor and/or city administrator to sign a one easement agreement for the Grove Place water main replacement project. Mr. Skalski.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. So this, I hope, is fairly straightforward. We are designing a replacement water line along Grove Place. And this, the design is nearly finalized, and what is before you tonight is the easement agreement to permit that water line to be installed. Chris has worked out the details along with our designer with the Roswell Housing Authority, and I believe I'll take any questions if you have and pass them on to Chris if they're detailed.
Any questions? Do I have a motion for this easement?
Motion to approve.
I have a motion by Councilmember Tyser to approve. Do I have a second? Second by Councilmember Palermo. All in favor, raise your hand. It's unanimous. Thank you very much. Item number 6 is consideration of an update to the solid waste business plan. Mr. Skalski.
I am going to introduce Nick Pizzello to walk you through the solid waste business plan. We've talked about this off and on a bit at committee, and this is really the first time since Nick took over solid waste almost 3 years ago, it's hard to believe, that he's had a chance to really go through the entire operation and our business planning process. And he's going to walk you through the highlights of the business plan and take any questions that you have.
Good evening. As Dan stated, we've been through some of this information before, so we're going to kind of breeze through that a little bit quickly, and then we'll get to the meat and potatoes of the presentation. Business plan update began in fiscal year 20. We've now brought that to conclusion. If you may remember, we brought this back to you back in the middle of December last year, last time we talked about that. So we're going to maintain our fleet. We're going to update the transfer station, which is actually in the process right now. We're going to utilize the operations management system, which is currently the Hyperweb system. We're going to optimize the residential drop-off area, and of course, we're going to monitor our financial stability. Some of the changes that we've incorporated, we've got a small business recycling program. Small businesses only. These businesses use the 96-gallon cans rather than a dumpster service. So we're going to be able to offer them up to 2 65-gallon recycling containers. That was something that has been requested by certain small businesses. So we've actually begun to offer that program even now. And excess cardboard collection, again, that's something that's tied to customer requests. And we're going to be able to pick up to 20 flattened and secured boxes for a $10 fee. We will check those fees annually, and we would make them subject to change depending on the market, depending on how much we actually use that service. The City Recycling Center, we're currently closed to non-residents, as you may remember, until a cost-sharing approach can be developed with other North Fulton cities. We're recommending that we end the recycling, the paint recycling, or charge a fee. It will eliminate $30,000 to $50,000 annual cost. That's the last 3-year average. Or charge $3 a gallon and accept oil-based paint at the household hazardous waste event. So basically what we're saying is water-based paint can be disposed of in an environmentally friendly manner by drying it, throwing it in the garbage. And then if that's not what the mayor and council decide, then we would recommend a $3 charge per can, which actually covers the cost of the can to recycle. We want to limit or charge while you wait shredding. For those of you that have ever seen the line while you do shredding while you wait, it's a very long line. It's really tiring on staff. It's a big draw on staff. We would like to limit that to Tuesday through Friday. And if that's not the recommendation, if mayor and council decide that they would not like to limit it, we would like to charge up to $20 a box, just to kind of keep that to a minimum. We also want to standardize the hours of operation for the recycling center from 8:30 to 5, and that would be Tuesday through Saturday. We currently have different hours of operation. We'd like to keep that just consistent across the board. We've got a new baler coming up this year, capital purchases, residential rear loader, a front loader, a dumpster delivery vehicle, and a fully automated side loading garbage truck in fiscal 23. Fee recommendations. Right now, we're charging for a large item collection, it's $20. We're asking to update that charge to a $30 fee, which actually more closely represents what it actually costs us to go out and get those items and take them back to the transfer station. We are asking for a late container set out charge of $50 per occurrence. There would be a one-time per year grandfather. In other words, we would let them pass the first time. We would take their address. We wouldn't charge them the first time. Container replacement fee is currently $25. We're asking that to go to $50, which accurately represents what the can costs us. A dumpster replacement request. We do have businesses that ask to replace the dumpster for one reason or another. It's older. It's it doesn't look as well as they would like it to. We would like to be able to charge to do that. Inaccessible dumpster. We have innumerable amounts of dumpsters that are blocked every week. With the Hyperweb system, we're actually able to keep track of those incidences through pictures and work orders. And we'd like to be able to charge $100 to go back to be able to collect those. An extra commercial collection, we currently charge $45 for the 4-yard, $55 for a 6 and 8 yard. We would like to increase that fee to $100 per collection. As we stated, while you wait shredding, $20 a box if we choose not to limit the hours of while you wait shredding. Paint recycling, again, that would be a $3 charge. And then enforce the 2 cubic yard limit. This is on yard waste. Currently, there's a lot of folks out there that are having a hard time trying to be able to determine how much they can put out every week. And we've got it contractually obligated for an extra 5 yards for $75, which by industry standards is less than a third of what most private companies charge. So it's actually a really good charge, a really good fee for the folks. We are working on our public education campaign. We're going to promote the services and successes of the Solid Waste Division, publicize events and initiatives, and we're looking at rebranding the recycling center and the curbside recycling programs. We want to provide recurring education pertaining to curbside recycling, set out limits, what materials can be set out, things of that nature, as well as yard waste. highlight services provided, promote benefits of multi-stream recycling, and provide basic to advanced recycling education. That's a lot geared toward the recycling center itself and children recycling. I know that was kind of fast, but any questions?
Councilmember Palermo.
Thank you, Mr. Fisher, and Nick, great presentation, appreciate it. So when I was sitting down with Dan and Sharon, they walked me through all this and educated me a lot. I want to just remind what my goal is. I want to make it as easy as possible for residents to be able to recycle, and that's a continued goal. And just really being supportive as possible to residents, making it easier. So with that, my preference is, instead of just eliminating the paint recycling, I'd rather just charge for it. But it is probably good education, and probably because I learned from y'all that it turns out that actually there's ways you can just then throw it in the dumpster depending on the kind. So maybe we should educate more on that. But I'd still like to have it be a possibility, but for the fee. And with shredding, still again wanting to just really service our residents. We just bought that new device not that long ago. I'd be more supportive of just reducing the hours than charging, because I think $20 to me sounds kind of extreme when taxpayers just bought for this, paid for this large machine. And then I guess just a question I have is, because knowing that my goal is we're recycling as much as possible, I was thinking, for non-residents, aren't there either certain things that are revenue generating for us, where just certain things they could do? And then separately, my question was, are there just certain things we could charge where we're not subsidizing the non-resident, but we're charging, and it's a win because they're getting to recycle it, and at the same time, they're covering the costs, not Roswell residents. And I believe the response was that it's kind of difficult to accept money, et cetera, but I'm realizing the $3 a gallon, and there was the proposal for the $20 a box. So I guess I'll just again ask, are there any specific things or ways we could be allowing non-residents to come in as long as they're covering their costs? And I do know you mentioned you're working hard with some other cities, and there's one or two that seem interested where they might actually, as a city, pay Roswell, which is fantastic. But I guess just what are your thoughts of any other opportunities for that?
Let me take the first attempt at responding to that. In terms of the specific charges, the input is much appreciated. When it comes to the dealing with cash and accepting non-residents, from our assessment and the logistics, it's difficult to do that for us, period. With individuals that we charge fees for, but it's extremely difficult to manage that type of a program for non-residents. And honestly, there's no amount of money that we could charge individually that would recover the cost that it creates for the city. So there's no individual kind of recyclable materials that would generate enough revenue at a reasonable charge. We could charge for it, but it would be so high, it would be, I think, very unattractive. It wouldn't really encourage recycling. The primary reason so many people came here from non-resident areas is because it was free. And that a lot at the recycling center and even the transfer station, which, so I hope that addresses your question.
Yes. And before, so as I mentioned, I'll be supporting this tonight with the limited hours of the shredding and the $3 a gallon for the paint. But I asked this mayor and council, if you feel there's anything I'm missing, just knowing that hopefully we have the shared goals that we want to increase recycling, make it easy and low cost for residents. So if you have any suggestions on how we make that better, I'd love to hear it. But without that, I certainly will be supporting this tonight.
Any other questions? Oh, Councilmember Hall.
Thank you. Great presentation. I just had, I want to applaud you for the small business recycling. I've had many small businesses reach out, and they're just shocked that they weren't able to put their recycling cans out, so that's great. Also, back to the shredding, would there be, and you would know logistically if this doesn't work, could you offer self-service shredding from X time to this time at no charge, and then from this time
You can take that one.
Yeah, I think that from a logistical perspective, I don't think that we could have residents actually using the machine. It is a rather large machine, and it is hand-fed. So I would think that from a legal perspective, that would probably be prohibitive.
Use it, enter at your own risk.
We have safety paint on the recycling center, and the equipment is on the other side of that, where we do not want the members of the public, unless they're on a tour, to be on the other side of that safety line.
Any other questions for the Councilmember Zapata?
Thank you. So, so a couple of things here. The paint. You know, we really want to encourage people to recycle paint. We don't want to bury on the backyard, you know, the half or quarter of a paint that they have left from the project. So, so regarding the paint, recycling paint, so it's at $3 per gallon. What about if it's just a little quarter or less than a quarter of a can, the big can? How do you measure how many gallons is there? Because it's going to cost money and time to measure, you know, if on the can is a quarter of a gallon or what it is in there. So I don't know, chart by gallons, I don't know how practical it is from the implementation perspective. So that is my, you know, point number one. And also I really want to, maybe we can do even more than semi-annual, maybe quarterly, to people go there and bring the paint at no charge as well, so give the chance more often people 4 times a year to bring their collection of paint through the season and bring it for no charge. Because we really want to encourage people to recycle paint. Dumping the paint anywhere else is not ecological and cause, you know, problems. So I have an issue charging for paint. So the other one is the shredding. You know, I want to echo here Councilmember Hall about do it yourself. I mean, if it's a big cost, the labor of having in person someone putting the paper for someone else, you know, at the end of the day, it's just putting paper in there. Most of us have a shredding machine at the home, and we know how to operate in a smaller scale. It's just a bigger scale. So it's not ask them to take off a plane. It's just putting paper on a shredding machine. And then, like, you know, Councilmember Hall suggested, just do at your own risk. And it's not that complicated to operate it. So shredding is also $20 per box. Again, we need to encourage people to recycle this paper. So those are my 2 main issues with this proposal. And then the container replacement fee, 25 to 50. I don't know, there's a life expectancy of the can. What about if the can is mistreated by people who pick it up, just throw it from the truck, run into the curb, and then eventually you get the corners, the bottom corners of the can chew up. So I don't know, you know, if you claim one every 5 or 10 years, it's at no charge. If you claim wine every 6 months, obviously something's wrong, you have to pay for that. So I want to get more into detail on that.
If I may respond, I'll try to hit each of those, but the last one's the easiest. And on the replacement cans, yes, the cans have an anticipated lifespan of 7 years to 10 years roughly, and there's no charge for replacement of a 7 or 10-year-old can. But what we have seen is we've rolled out new cans within the last couple of years, and we are getting a number of customers who want a replacement can either because it's dirty or just they want a new can because they just moved in and there's a perfectly good can that's out there. So that's what we're trying to discourage, and we do not intend to charge for a replacement of a can that's at the end of its useful life or has been, you know, hit by a car, no responsibility of the owner. So that's, I think, the intent.
And also on this point, we have 2 different sizes of cans.
Yes.
So are you charging the same for either one, or you are going to differentiate if you want the small one or the big one?
No, one charge. The cost on the can difference is only a couple of dollars per can, believe it or not, depending on, you know, the different sizes. So it would be one fee, yes, sir.
So if I could go back to shredding, the challenge with shredding and while you wait shredding is really traffic management and the just interruption to the workflow. So number one, if an individual stops to watch their shredding, they are backing up traffic in the recycling center. Generally, they don't park over to the side and cars are, it just creates a traffic problem for as long as it takes to shred their material. That's the biggest problem, is it really slows traffic flow through the center. It also takes an individual away from whatever they're doing to actually do shredding at that particular point of time. What we normally do is allow customers to drop off their material where it's kept under lock, at least observed by staff, until we do shredding that day, and they can do it towards the end of the day when there's not a lot of customers coming through. That's the biggest challenge. People come at lunch hour when everybody's coming and stop their car and want to watch their stuff being shredded. That's a throughput problem for the entire center. So that's the real challenge that we're facing with that one. And the price that we're proposing is just competitive with what a private shredding company, a little bit less than what most of them are charging. And then finally on paint, I would just challenge the general, we want to promote recycling as much as possible. Paint recycling is not a particularly viable recycling process right now. There are very few recycled paint producers, and the cost to do so is extremely high. It's higher than producing paint from raw materials. There's very little use for recycled paint. There's very little market for producing recycled paint. It's actually, in my opinion right now, just as a general professional opinion, given the recycling market, I think it's more environmentally friendly to be putting latex paint in the garbage and disposing of it in a landfill. That sounds heresy based on what we all kind of grew up hearing and seeing and thinking, but in terms of the cost and the benefit and the environmental benefits, I'd rather see that material going into a landfill and not having to really force a recycling site process where there really has been no successful circular market for paint, or at least not at the present time. So that's just my 2 cents. I think we're going to have a problem with the recycling paint unless we charge for it, and I think that'll allow us to do some other more pro-recycling activities.
Councilman Palermo.
Thank you. I'd actually, I appreciate that. So I'd like to make a motion unless there wants to be, this committee wants to discuss more. But a question I have, this is just a single read. From committee, this would go to council, single vote, right? It's not like a double reading or anything like that, right? Okay. And with that, if this committee would allow, I'd like to motion to move this forward to council with not charging the $20 per box, but instead reducing the hours, charging the $3 per gallon, and staff, whatever way staff feels is the best way to do, but somehow show the intent for the container replacement fee is not excludes when they've reached their useful life. So that's the motion. And hopefully there'll be a second. And then also I encourage this council to think about this more and the public to have a look at this and provide any recommendations prior to the council meeting when this would come back.
Do I have a motion? Do I have a second? I have a second by Councilmember Hall. I was looking right in that direction. So I have a motion to don't charge the $20 shredding, but do limit the time, charge the $3 per gallon for paint, and detail out the replacement of the cans when they get to the end of their life. Motion and a second. All in favor, raise your hand. And that is unanimous. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
We are going to change over to the Admin, Finance, Recreation, and Parks Committee. It will take us just a few minutes. We'll be right back. delay was a little longer than normal. We had some video recording issues, so we'll move into the Administration, Finance, Recreation, and Parks Committee, approval of the minutes of the Admin, Finance, Rec, and Parks Committee of March 9th. Do I have a motion to approve those minutes?
Motion to approve the minutes.
A motion from Councilmember Tyser. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second from Councilmember Judy. All in favor, please raise your hand. Thank you. That's unanimous. Second item on the agenda for administration is consideration of a resolution to accept and allocate the revised federal fiscal year 2021 Community Development Block Grant Award. And Mr. Alford will give you that information.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Back in February, Mayor and Council approved the city's 2021 CDBG Community Development Block Grant Award to 7 different projects. That was in the amount of a conservatively estimated $500,000 total award from HUD. Shortly after that approval, HUD came back and gave us our official award amount, which was $470,283. So we need to reduce the allocations, and staff's recommendation is to reduce the administration and planning allocation from $50,000 to $20,283.
Are there any questions? Do I have a motion for this item?
Motion to approve.
Motion by Councilmember Judy. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Councilmember Tyser. All in favor, raise your hand. And that is unanimous again. Thank you. Thanks, Mr. Alford. Item number 3 is a presentation of the FY 2021 third quarter investment report by Mr. Luckett.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Before I get started with the report, I did want to just update you. I know we talked a lot about investments the last month or two. As of this month, we are invested with our investment advisory firm, so that has gotten kicked off and off the ground, and we're happy to report that, so appreciate your support in that. I'll get started with our report. So this is our third quarter FY 2021 report. As you might remember, we mentioned this a lot, but the city, in terms of investing dollars, does have several priorities. You know, our utmost priority is the safety of the funds that we are investing. We want to be in compliance with our state law and local ordinance. We want to ensure that we are have sufficient liquidity to meet all of our obligations, and of course, our final priority in our investment program is to maximize the income of the funds that we're holding. So I wanted to show you at the bottom of this first page, this shows you the current status of our overall portfolio. So as you can see, right now we're at 52 basis points for our overall portfolio as compared to the 1-year treasury at 8 basis points. This is just a graphical representation at the top of this page that shows you that we are about 44 basis points higher than the current 1-year treasury benchmark. The pie chart at the bottom of this page gives you an idea of what we are currently invested in. And I've mentioned this a couple times, but just to reiterate, once COVID happened about a year ago, and interest rates came down a lot, or the bulk of our agency bonds that we were holding at the time were called. And so all of those bonds were called, the funds came back to the city, and we've been holding on to those funds, one for, just unanticipated needs because of the unknown with COVID, but also knowing that we were moving to an investment advisory firm to make sure that we were prepared for that and ready to build a new portfolio from the ground up. So that's an explanation for why you see that over 50% of our cash is in the bank. Kind of the sad part about it, though, is that we're actually earning more in the bank than we are in Georgia Fund 1, the local government investment pool that we are a participant in. But as you can see, we're down to about 7% of our portfolio is invested in CDs, 11% in federal agencies, and 1% in municipal bonds. This next page gives you an update on just a little more details on the various sectors that we're invested in. As you can see, our total investment portfolio as of the end of March was right at $140 million. 80 million of that was, like I said, was in our bank. 33 million in Georgia Fund 1, which is our local government investment pool. 9.9 million in CDs, and going down, we have right at 10% of our total portfolio that's invested in various federal agency bonds. The bar chart at the bottom just kind of gives you a history over the last year of the fluctuation of our portfolio and the various sectors that we've been invested in each of those months. Next the next section gives you an idea of our overall liquidity of our portfolio, and you can see because we have so much in our bank deposits, the average maturity of our portfolio is right at half a year. That'll change as we become more invested through our investment advisory firm. On a maturity schedule, you can see that, again, the bulk of our portfolio is maturing in a year or less, and we have some of our investments going out in the 3 to 4 year range. And then finally, the last couple of pages gives you just a listing of our various investments, CDs and agency bonds that we're invested in. I'll point out here at the bottom of this last page again, our bank deposits, we're earning 23 basis points on those. We're right at 5 basis points for the Georgia Fund 1 local government investment pool. So I'll be glad to answer any questions you might have.
Any questions for Mr. Luckett? Councilmember Zapata.
Thank you. Can you go back, please, to page 4 of your presentation? Right. So you mentioned that now the bank deposits are they offer better return, but also, what about the risk? And I see that the 57.65 or 58% is with JP Morgan Chase. So, great bank and everything, but, risk is risk. And, we saw this in year past when there was some issue with big banks. And so, so what is the risk that we are assuming in there with 58%?
There actually should be zero risk because by state law, our public deposits are required to be collateralized. And because of the size of JP Morgan and some of the larger banks that have a presence in Georgia, this started 2 or 3 years ago, that all of the larger banks are required to participate in a shared risk pool. And so they are all required to put enough securities aside so that if one of the banks failed, everybody that has deposits with that bank immediately gets their funds back, and that's covered by the other banks that are part of the pool. So in terms of public funds, it should be zero risk.
Great, thank you for the explanation.
Sure.
Thank you. Any other questions for Mr. Luckett? All right, thank you, Ryan. We
Thank
appreciate that presentation. We'll move on to item number 4. Under other items, and I think Councilmember Palermo had maybe brought this up originally, consideration for a resolution in support of native plants for the city's future landscaping project. So Councilmember Palermo, if you'd like to open up with comments, that'd be great.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Mr. Fisher. And I appreciate everyone's time tonight. So obviously this is an item we've discussed before. I'd like to just give a little background. And once I give the little background, want to show a video that will give a much better background than I could give, and just really raise some awareness on native plants. And also, frankly, too, 3.5 years ago at committee meetings, there was always the opportunity for public comment, and we have multiple residents here that certainly know a lot more than I do about native plants and all the benefits, and really, great stewards of the environment and volunteers, actually supporting the native plants at Smith Plantation, as well as working to get rid of the intrusive plants. So really appreciate, so many Roswell residents taking a lot of pride in really having a green city, and so that's what this is about, in the sense of how can we help improve our environment, and at the same time doing it in a way where long term it can be helping really reduce costs and create many other benefits, and a big one being stormwater, in the sense that stormwater might be something where there's many residents out there that might not know the impacts that can have, but in Roswell there are so many residents that are negatively impacted by a lot of stormwater, et cetera. And so these are all a lot of benefits, which of course we'll get into in a second. What I also want to highlight for this committee as I request for your support tonight. So we in here, we have a resolution, and of course, this has been an ongoing discussion that we've had at some other committee meetings. So it was drafted, I think, back in December, maybe a little before then. And what I'd say is, I think there's a lot of flexibility for compromise in there. And one of the things that I suggest, my hope is tonight, there'll be support to move this to council. That being said, what I'd like to do is, and really invite, any two elected officials that would like to join, but I'd like the opportunity, hoping that this committee supports it and supports the fact that we move forward with a native plants initiative, to sit down with some different stakeholders in the city, and if committee votes and shows that we're definitely going to move in this direction, the chance to bring in some residents and really work for some different ways to make sure it's clear that, of course, if there's a situation where it's just not possible to buy the native plants or the native plants necessary, there's always the ability to come to council and just really request that exception, which I'm confident, I believe, would be unanimous. That of course, this council is always going to be very, very flexible, very reasonable, and at the same time, just ensuring there's a public, transparent process. But I think it is important that we really move forward and move in this direction, and really have Roswell be a leader in the area. And with it, that's where I said I think there's a lot of opportunity for compromise. The one area I don't feel there's a lot of compromise in is, I feel there does need to be teeth. This cannot just be a photo op. This cannot just be a way for us to pat ourselves on the back and say we're encouraging it. Instead, we really have to be doing it, and we really have to be moving forward in that direction. That's my hope tonight. And again, I want to discuss that, and certainly open to what the other committee members have to say and interested. And again, hoping we can have support to move this to council. And obviously, there's always the opportunity to fine tune it. And I definitely appreciate it. I got, some of my conversations with staff, I was able to learn some additional information. The fact that within EPW for Public Works, there's a Georgia guide which talks about the strengths of natives, and Jay within Parks and Rec, who has a great experience around this. I learned a lot from, and I think he's a key stakeholder that I wanna make sure that we're working with and really fine tuning this. But again, we've been discussing it for many months, and I'm just hoping we can move it forward to council, and together move something forward that ensures there's the flexibility that if there's any hardships, there's any issues, as long as that's raised to council, then it's completely understandable. And at the same time, that we really are working hard moving forward with this. So with that, Jana, if you could actually play the video and really show us some great background around the strengths of native plants.
Look, we have monarch caterpillars. Oh my gosh, I was just out here last week telling someone we didn't have any. So, it's a beautiful day. Yay, yay, yay.
Roswell's natural beauty and unique setting are undeniable. Plants native to our area are an essential part of our unique heritage. The natural landscapes we protect and create can give us a respite from urban life. But rapid growth has frayed the fabric that we must maintain to ensure the future of life on the planet. Our health is bound with the health of the ecosystem that we are a part of. Native plants allow our wildlife and pollinators, songbirds to thrive while requiring little maintenance because they are perfectly suited to our local environment. Roswell residents can speak more specifically to the benefits that our native plants provide.
The most beautiful, hardy, and drought-tolerant plants and trees in Roswell are native to our area. They are perfectly suited to thrive in Georgia's unique soil. Their roots are 6 to 18 feet deep, and because their roots are so far-reaching, they don't need fertilizing, watering, or chemical application. They are prettiest and healthiest when trimmed only once per year, compared to traditional lawns and plantings, which need mowing and watering multiple times per month. Cities that replace turf and exotic plants with native species report a 25 to 50% savings on their total annual landscaping costs. Last year, Roswell spent over $50,000 just on purchasing landscaping chemicals alone. Native plants are Roswell's heritage and a vital natural resource. With all the savings in time and money planting native flowers, bushes, and trees could provide to Roswell, it is absolutely the most practical, budget-friendly, and frugal choice. It's the future of landscaping for our city and beyond.
Hi, friends. Roswell is a beautiful city with a wonderful historic heritage, but there are some areas for needed improvement in our public spaces, such as better quality streetscaping along our road medians and sidewalks, a reinvestment into revitalizing our aging parks and tree canopy, while investing in new parks and green spaces. Native plants will ensure that our public spaces are not only attractive, but are drought tolerant, low maintenance, non-invasive, and supports our local wildlife. A smart landscaping investment in future city projects with native plants and trees will pay dividends to making Roswell more beautiful. It will help improve our tourism, attract new businesses to relocate here, and research shows that high-quality public landscaping is valued by taxpayers for its improved quality of life and increased property values.
Biodiversity is all the living parts that sustain life. Unfortunately, urbanization is fragmenting and destroying that diversity. The extensive cultivation of exotic plants and the perfect lawn are poisoning our pollinators and leaving wildlife with diminished food sources. The traditional suburban lawn uses 10 times more pesticides per acre than farmland. Invasive plants and pests, often sold commercially, are overwhelming native plants and degrading habitat. Our native oak supports 500 species of caterpillars. The ginkgo from Asia supports 5. It takes 6,000 caterpillars to feed one brood of chickadees. The plants and animals that have evolved here are an integral part of our culture, our identity, more historical than our historic homes. Southern writers and artists share this beauty and uniqueness with the world. It is up to us to keep it so.
Native plants have incredibly deep and extensive root systems. As you can see in this picture, the dramatic difference between the roots of the native prairie grasses compared with the non-native standard turf grass. These root systems provide incredible benefits to our city. They help control erosion, they reduce flooding by 30%, they help rainwater percolate down into soil, reducing water irrigation requirements, and they help manage stormwater runoff. They also help filter pollutants, including fertilizers and pesticides, out of the water as it makes its way into our stormwater systems and our waterways. This helps keep our waterways, including our treasure Chattahoochee River, clean for generations to come.
The natural beauty of this area is a significant attraction for visitors and residents alike. Vickery Creek and the Chattahoochee helped establish our community and our economy. As our city has grown, we have lost trees and natural areas to concrete and asphalt. It is our responsibility to maintain balance as we grow and to be good stewards of the natural beauty that sustains our soul. Native plants help temper the coarseness of rapid growth and provide food and habitats for native animals and insects, which in turn promotes biodiversity. Native plants are our history and if protected, our future. The city has a responsibility to lead by example in being a good steward of the natural resources that we have inherited. In 2013, the City of Roswell received the Community Wildlife Habitat Certification through the National Wildlife Federation. Roswell has formally recognized the importance of native plants and documented a commitment to encourage their use in lieu of ornamentals. Let's ensure that this achievement remains intact and is celebrated. The installation of native plants is a great way to take one giant step in the right direction.
Hi, my name is Liz Raines. I'm a science lab teacher here at Roswell North Elementary School, and I wanted to tell you a little bit about how I use native plants in my curriculum. we took the opportunity to plant milkweed native to Georgia in some of our garden boxes. We wanted to attract monarch butterflies, and it worked. Not only did we attract the butterflies, but they laid eggs on the milkweed. We watched the life cycle. We used the milkweed to feed the caterpillars, and we actually got a chance to tag the adult monarchs that we had raised and release them. We are now part of the Monarchs Across Georgia program. We are also part of the butterfly trail that runs all through Georgia. Without the native plants, I don't think we would have been able to do this program. It's something the kids look forward to, and it's a really exciting thing for us. So we support the native plants.
Hi, my name is Michelle Vincent. I'm an environmental scientist and an ecologist, and I work as a stormwater consultant and an environmental scientist, and I just wanted to take a minute to talk to you about native plants. Native plants are really great for our environment. You probably heard gardeners talk about the mantra, the right plant in the right place. Well, native plants are a really good way for you to get the right plant in the right place. Native plants are adapted to our soils, growing conditions, and climates here. That means we can use less fertilizers, less pesticides, and once they're established, very much less irrigation. Because we use less chemicals, this is better for our ecosystem and it's better for us. It also costs less. We have less labor costs, less costs for chemicals, and that's much more cost effective. Native plants are also very important for our native pollinators and our wildlife. Many of you might know that our pollinators, like our native bees, aren't doing very well. And that's mostly because of habitat loss. So many of our yards, gardens, and parks don't have a lot of good wildlife habitat, and that's because we don't have a lot of native plants. So planting native plants in our parks and our borders and our gardens will actually improve the wildlife habitat for us. Using less pesticides also is very good for the health of our pollinators. There are so many beautiful native plants available to us, like native vines, shrubs, trees, and flowers. I think we should plant more in Roswell.
Hi, I'm Carlin Kirk. I grew up in Georgia and I've lived in Roswell for about 10 years. I'm also an active member of the Georgia Native Plant Society. I grew to love native plants, not only because they provide food and shelter for bees and butterflies, but because they help me connect to where I call home. Seeing native plants helps me remember my history here. When I see a redbud tree, I remember being a kid and drawing on the heart-shaped leaves. My friends tell stories of seeing passion flower blooms when they were little. They'd say, we called them maypops. And then you've got plants like Hearts of Buston and Sweet Little Betsy's. They all help to remind me of my roots in Georgia, that I'm home.
Native beauty is a cost-effective choice for forward-thinking cities. Roswell is blessed with our historic heritage, natural forests, creekways, and the Chattahoochee River. Native plants and animals complement that distinction and will help protect the natural environment for generations to come. Members of the council, we can do this together. Our responsible action will secure the future. Going forward, whenever the city of Roswell plants, let's choose the smart and budget-friendly option, native plants.
Look, we have monarch caterpillars. Oh my gosh, I was just out here last week telling someone we didn't have any.
So, Councilmember Palermo, we have about 5 minutes. I don't know that you'll be able to get through what you want to at this one or not, but I did want to let you know so you can take it from here.
Excellent, thank you. So there's only 5 minutes left. In that case, again, as I mentioned, I think this is really important. We've been talking about it for almost 6 months with the different committees, et cetera. And my goal is to really make some progress and move this forward. What I'd like to encourage and ask the committee if they'd support or what it would take to get majority support is I'd like to schedule this to come to a council meeting, whether that council meeting be in May or even early June. And what I think that would do is show basically show staff that we do want to move in the direction of really having some requirements around around native plants. And again, what I think would be helpful is if this committee supported where I and certainly other elected officials as well, if they'd like to join the meeting, sitting with staff and residents that are very aware. You know, as we saw with this video, there's a lot of residents that love Roswell and they love our environment. This is a great opportunity. And so I think we've got an incredible first draft. And I think it's something that should be passed. But again, I think it's the opportunity. If staff knows that there really is interest in moving in this direction, the opportunity to sit down. I'd love to provide some potential draft updates between now and that next council meeting. And really, again, would love to see this be a unanimous win for both Roswell and the environment.
All right, thank you. I'm going to go to Councilmember Tyser, and I certainly do not want to minimize this item, but we don't have a lot of time. If you could sort of be brief at this meeting.
Thank you. First of all, I'd like to thank everybody for their letters. And my concern is that what's written on this piece of paper won't yield results. The resolution, I think, as it's written, will do nothing to really meet our objectives, especially if staff doesn't or can't support it. So I want to help. So I want to make a solid and implementable proposal tonight. I've been talking with one of the residents who's on this video, and she's really helped me to understand what this is about and how it can work for us. And here's what I think we should do between now and potentially another meeting. Each department, she has sent me a list of what she would consider qualified native plants and places where you can get them. There are 4 departments in the city who have some responsibility for planting. And what I would like to see them do is take that list, and whether that's sitting down with some of you from the video with them, but I'd like to see each department put together their preferred palette of plants. That's not easy to say 3 times fast. Their preferred palette of plants from the list, and then that palette, those 4 palettes come back to us for approval, and we can move forward. I think this is an easy, supported, and effective way to meet the objectives here. It can probably be done and implemented in a fairly short time. It's a real way to accomplish the goals. To me, resolution is nice, but a resolution without a plan, a resolution without a process, a resolution without teeth really doesn't make something happen. So for me, let's make it real. I'll support real action, but I'll avoid things that are just fluff to make people happy. And so, again, my proposal would be that we take that list and give it to each of the 4 directors involved and put together with whatever help they feel they need, bring those preferred plant palettes back, and let's move something forward based on that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Hall.
Thank you, and thank you for the great presentation, good information. I've been following this. As I mentioned in the previous meeting, my sister-in-law and her husband founded the West Georgia Native Plant Society. I'm very familiar with this. I'm also very familiar with the cities that this ordinance or this resolution was modeled after. I studied what they do. They implement this program. I think that what we have is an excellent item to bring forward to the next council meeting or a council meeting in May or early June. There's an implementation plan. 50% this year, and these plants are available readily, so our departments, our staff can make, I don't believe they'd have an issue meeting this plan, so I would like to move it forward.
Councilmember Zapata.
Thank you. So, I know it's going to sound strange to call this initiative innovative. It is innovative, but it's helping us to go back to the basics. So it's innovative, but it's basic. So, for me, it's a no-brainer and has so many benefits. So I think that, and actually I believe, if I remember correctly, the Chattahoochee Nature Center used to have once a year an event that they will sell native plants. I don't know if they still do it, but it was a great, I remember early on when I was here in early 2000, we used to go once a year and look into the native plants. So I don't know if they hold this event, but definitely the Chattahoochee Nature Center is an engine to help us to promote and educate the community about the native plants. So I think that, a resolution is a great start. We all sign here resolution, so diminishing resolution I don't think is proper. We all here, sitting here, at some point, we sign resolutions for different things. So minimizing resolutions, I don't think is the right thing to do. It's a great start. And the resolution that also give us some guidelines in terms of time to implementation or startup schedule for the next 3 years, I think is very clear. My only thing is I don't know, especially in 2021, how achievable will be, because I'm big on accountability and responsibility of the city. So giving certain goals that will be very hard to achieve, especially the first year, is a lot of learning curve. That is something that we can discuss further now or in May, not June, May. I prefer May meeting. So, but overall, I totally support this initiative, which I call innovative, but back to basics.
Councilmember Wilsey.
Yes, thank you. And thank you all for being a part of the video and the education and efforts that you all have put forth over the last several months. I really, really appreciate it. As a Georgian native, I grew up in North Georgia in the woods looking for wildflowers and taking pictures of them. And so I really, really appreciate where you're coming from and kind of where our native plants are, as well as our gardens are as a part of our history and our diversity. I would really welcome a chance, as Councilmember Palermo suggested, to sit down with a group of the stakeholders that are here, as well as some others, and with staff, and to talk about how we can move this forward and to come up with some real initiatives. I've looked at some things that are going on in Athens with some gardens and things like that, and designating certain areas, and then also just talking to staff and finding out exactly what's practical in the areas of stormwater and with some of the work that they're doing, as well as removing some of the invasives. I know they're doing a lot of work with that now, but just kind of what are some initiatives, and how can we really lean on the volunteers and residents to help us with this continued advocacy and education program. So I really like that idea, Councilmember Palermo, if we could organize some stakeholder meetings going forward, but very interested in continuing the conversation.
Thank you. Councilmember Judy.
I'll be pretty quick here. I think a lot of good points have been brought up by Councilman Tizer, Councilman Zapata on the 2021 year kind of being a learning year. I have also had some discussions with staff on some different issues regarding funding of the pilot program, where that's coming from in our budget, exemptions for certain properties, and how this reads. So I'm supportive of this. I'm kind of stuck in the middle. I think it's about there, but if we could push this to June and we could meet with everybody and massage this, I believe I can support this evening, at least getting it on the road to where we need to go. I'd even say I'd like to bring it back to a committee if possible, and then send it to council. I think we're ready, but that might be extra help. But I'm supportive of it. I think we can massage it. I think everybody has some good points here, and we'll love to get staff and everybody together again to make sure we've got something that's actionable.
Thank you. Councilmember Palermo, I'm going to let you, if you will, close this
I'm going to make a motion. So in the spirit of compromise, what I would like to do is, it's obviously a multifaceted motion, is so to move this item to the city council meeting, which would be the first first regularly scheduled meeting in June. So that's number one. What I'm hearing from Councilman Judy is interest in having another discussion at a committee meeting. I'll let staff decide which committee meeting that comes to, as long as it's before the June council meeting. And to Councilmember Wilsey's points as well, that Jana will work with us. I want to make sure that Jana's helping where all elected officials feel invited, and at the same time, I want to make sure we're having the opportunity for Roswell residents that are familiar with native plants and passionate about this issue to be able to have the discussion with staff as well and with us. So those are the three parts of my motion, if it's supported by this committee.
Thank you. You've heard a motion from Councilmember Palermo, and that would be the June 14th would be that first the first meeting in June for mayor and council.
Perfect.
Is there a second?
Second.
I have a second from Councilmember Hall. All in favor, raise your hand. And that is unanimous to move that forward with that motion and second. I have one more item on the agenda that I really don't have any time to do because we have another meeting coming in here. Councilmember Palermo, that was your item. Do you have any suggestions for this one?
I mean, obviously, I'd prefer to discuss it tonight, but if there's not time, there's not time. So I guess I'd just like the opportunity to push it to the next committee meeting.
Okay, do you want to bring that to the pleasure of this council committee to the next, which would be the transportation ComDev, or do you want to bring it back to the next admin?
I'm fine either way. So if this obviously, I'd prefer the sooner the better, but I'm flexible either way. If you want to wait till the next admin,
I would recommend the admin meeting
okay.
just because we try to keep it on
I'm
schedule.
fine with that if that's what the committee
Is
prefers.
that okay to defer this then? And that's a motion to defer it to the next admin. Is there
That's
a
right.
second? Have a second from Councilmember Judy. All in favor? And that is Councilmember Hall, Heiser, Wilsey, Palermo, and Judy. All opposed? Councilmember Zapata. And with that, we are adjourned. Thank you. And sorry for being so quick on these last ones.